This season is meant to be the next step in McLaren's Formula 1 revival, but it has started with both cars fighting to avoid being last in the season opener. And the worrying thing for the team is that the message afterwards is that this could be its true performance level in the short term. If that's the case, then Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo could find themselves struggling to even score points, until McLaren gets to the root of its 2022 car's problems. It wasn't that long ago that McLaren topped the first day of testing at Barcelona and had an encouraging start to pre-season, with a car that looked good and that the team was happy with. But the MCL36 has proven to be more troublesome than expected. It suffered front brake cooling problems that badly limited its mileage in the second test in Bahrain, and then had a clear lack of performance in the season opener. Ricciardo and Norris each ran in last place during the race and eventually finished 14th and 15th, giving McLaren a pointless start to 2022. Team boss Andreas Seidl said, "We know we have an issue on the performance side, which is disappointing and painful," and described McLaren as being completely on the back foot. And Norris, who signed a new long-term deal with McLaren prior to the start of the season, said that this will be the case for a while. He had a grim message for McLaren's loyal fanbase: "I'm expecting pain, and I think everyone needs to know there's going to be a bit of pain." Norris's stark assessment of McLaren's plight came soon after the race and is perhaps a more emotional perspective. But if he is right, then it marks a major step back from where McLaren has been in the last couple of seasons, occasionally scoring podiums, re-establishing itself as the best team in F1's midfield, and even winning a race. It means McLaren is in danger of falling well short of its expectations for 2022. Norris reckons the car is a long way down on downforce, and that he expected McLaren's Bahrain race looked as bad as what it felt inside the car. He added, "Over the last few seasons there's been a lot of expectation from us within the team, but also from everyone else watching, and we just haven't got it right at the minute. We're a long way off. Not just a little bit, a long way." We'll look a bit further into the flaws of the McLaren in a moment, but for now we just wanted to pause to ask a quick favour. You probably don't like the subject of McLaren struggling in F1, but if you at least like our explanation of what's going on, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It makes a big difference to us, and we'd love to have you along as we hit all the big talking points from the 2022 F1 season. The first alarm bells are sounding, but McLaren is not yet in a crisis situation. This disappointing result will only escalate into something more concerning if it becomes clear that the MCL36 is inherently flawed. McLaren's initial feeling is that the car was very poorly matched to the Sakir circuit, but the team acknowledges that the underlying issue is the car. Because as Seidl pointed out, McLaren's ultimate ambition is to fight for wins and titles, and to do that, it needs a car that works on different layouts. It certainly will not get away with a car that can be brilliant one weekend and be knocked out of Q1 on a track like Bahrain. So it's already quite clear that the MCL36 is not an absolutely mega car that's just encountered an awkward set of circumstances, but how bad it might be is hard to judge for now. Ricciardo was 2 tenths away from getting through to Q2 in qualifying, while Norris was 3 tenths from Q3. McLaren was 1.2 seconds off the overall pace in Q2, when a year ago it was only 0.9 seconds off in the top 10 shootout, where the ultimate pace is even higher. Neither driver has reported a major flaw with the car, although Norris complained it was handling poorly in the race and said that made it tricky to get the tyres working properly. But after qualifying, both drivers' feedback was that it felt okay, it's just that they got to the end of the lap and the time wasn't good enough. Ricciardo reckons it's not massively out of balance, just lacking overall grip. That doesn't bode well, but if the car is simply grip limited, then the drivers will naturally feel like they are at its limit and then will rapidly find chunks of lap time if more grip can be found. That's a huge if though, and McLaren thinks it's far too soon to say what's achievable. Technical director James Key said, "The car itself as a platform is working well. Mechanically it's fine, aerodynamically it does what it's supposed to do. The drivers aren't finding the extremes that we had in last year's car in terms of balance and difficulty. It's a lot more consistent in that respect. But we need more grip, aerodynamically and mechanically, and that showed." McLaren has had a pointless season opener as recently as 2019, when it still went on to have a strong year and finish 4th in the championship. But Norris, who was then an F1 debutant, was at least into Q3 at the first race, so there was not the same question mark over the raw performance of the car. McLaren's poor qualifying performance in Bahrain was compounded by being the only team to start on the medium tyres in the Grand Prix. That meant Norris and Ricciardo lost too much ground early on against the others on softs and didn't have enough performance to attack when their rivals suffered earlier degradation. One mitigating factor for the MCL36 is that both drivers had to manage certain elements through the race that forced them into further compromises. Ricciardo was asked to call the right hand side of the car from the first lap, while Norris had a similar instruction later in the race. This is thought to be in addition to the brake temperature troubles that afflicted all teams, and that McLaren was managing with an interim fix to the problems that blighted its pre-season test in Bahrain. And this will have inevitably exaggerated the performance deficit. It's little surprise that McLaren suffered in this regard, given it completed no race simulations in pre-season. So as expected, the brake cooling problems that massively restricted McLaren's running in the second test have had a knock-on impact now the season has started for real. It's not because the MCL36 is burning through parts again, because it did have different brake ducts that were doing the job, but the McLaren is simply not as well sorted as it should have been for the start of the championship. In the second test, McLaren completed 185 fewer laps than Mercedes, 149 fewer than Ferrari, and 120 fewer than Red Bull. These are the teams that McLaren hoped to fight more closely this season, but it's little wonder they are out of sight with so much more time dedicated to setup refinements and tyre understanding. There's a huge amount of knowledge and performance lost within that big deficit. So McLaren has a degree of optimism that if it can catch up in terms of optimising its car, it will make a natural step anyway. And then it comes down to development, because there's no denying the MCL36 does need improvements. Norris said he hopes Bahrain is as bad as it gets, but if not, he has backed his team to make progress this year. The 2022 cars are brand new, so there should be big gains early on while teams understand their concepts and rapidly bring updates. But McLaren knows that this will be the same for its rivals as well, so it must make quick progress to stop this snowballing into a much bigger problem.